Hello there. Well, it's been quite a long time since I made a film very specifically with shamans in mind. If you're a shaman, this relates to you too. And if you know shamans, this will be helpful for you to know. So it's called Shamans and Negative Energy Possession. And I want to start off right away by saying that I have felt resistance to making this film, and I felt some embarrassment and a little bit of shame, or maybe more than a little bit of shame. For it's ever so important to make this really clear to you before we start. So negative energies, what are they? Simply put, those little voices that whisper things in your ear or in your consciousness. Critical, judgmental, attacking, condemnatory, aggressive, offensive, nasty, unworthy little voices, little dark voices that subtly suggest all sorts of things which are actually not true. And it can go from something as light-hearted as just being some negative remarks. It can even be negativity wrapped up in the guise of humour, saying something nasty. Oh, only joking, that's a good example. Or it can go right to the ultimate extreme, where the person is completely convinced that the only answer to all their problems is to take their own, or dare I even say it, another person's life. Yes, this is what negative energies are about. So it's from the most trivial to the most serious in terms of effects. And historically, I can just remind myself of Pol Pot. Pol Pot was the absolute dictator in Cambodia at a certain point back in the 20th century. And the result is that millions of people lost their lives. So wherever there's genocide going on, there's negative energies. So this is a particularly appropriate subject at the moment, as I'm sure 2 and 2 equals 4. Right, so here we go. I've got myself a very long list. So, although the title of this film is Shamans and Negative Energy Possession, there's a subtitle which is Why do shamans experience negative energy possession? Question mark, question mark, question mark. So we get to look at that later. So the very first identifying feature about this particular condition is, I'm giving it number 0 on my list. Number 0 is arrogance. I'm fine. Nothing wrong with me. Nothing to see here. Off you go. Go on. Go somewhere else. I'm fine. So that's the first thing to look out for, the arrogance. Second one on the list is self-isolating. After a while, when a person's been possessed by negative energy, after a while, they tend to want to withdraw from the world. I need to be really careful as I elucidate this list. If you've got one of these things on this list, this does not mean to say that you're dealing with negative energy possession. But if you can recognize a lot of the features on this list, then you can bet your what's names that this is relevant to you. Yeah. All right, so self-isolation, that was the number 1. Number 2, fatigue. Tired all the time, wrongly perceived. And when I say wrongly perceived, it's because there's a really irresistible temptation to put it down to something other than what it is. So if you come up with excuses very, very quickly, and the main important thing is if under no circumstances would you even contemplate this has got anything to do with negative energies, that's a real red flag. Which brings me to number 3. Denial. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. Or, well, I'm not so good actually, but I refuse to contemplate that as the cause. Must be something else. Must be a virus, must be this, must be that, must be that, must be that, must be something else. Couldn't possibly be that. And here's the next one in the denial constellation. I'm far too experienced a shaman to be tricked in that way. Ho, ho, ho. Number 4, ego-driven states. An even ego-driven state, for an example, could be, well, I'm going to stop doing that because it's just too much for me now. Not willing to look at why it might be that you've stopped doing that. And there's a subset with all this with regard to water. Some people find it suddenly more difficult to drink water. Some people find it more difficult to wash, to keep themselves clean, to keep their clothes clean, to keep the house clean. These are all little indicators. Obsessive overworking. I haven't got a moment to myself. There's so much I've got to just drive myself into the ground and wear myself out into a scrap. That's a really good indicator. Foolish risk-taking. Just going up to a cliff and quite happy to throw yourself off the cliff without even bothering to check what the levels of water are like in the pond or pool or lake or sea beneath you. That's a classic. What I want to suggest is all leading up to number 7. Out of balance. Work-life balance. Rest and recuperation and activity. It's all out of balance. That's a big one. Number 8, blaming and complaining about others. Well, if others would just, it's all about others. Fingers are always being pointed away from me. Got to be somebody else who's doing this. It's a classic. Number 9, progressive loss of capability. Now, the thing about these negative energies, and they are very, very tricky. They have guile. They are the masters of guile, these things. Because the loss of capability is slow and progressive. And I will give you another example. It could be a person might be infested with a parasite. I remember on the trip to the Orient coming back, and actually I got giardiasis and didn't realise. And there's a real parallel between being tricked by a parasite and tricked by negative energy, because in a sense they're the kind of the same thing. Giardiasis is a physical parasite you can actually examine in a stool sample from a patient, and you can then give them medicine and they can get over that infection. So when it comes to negative energies, it's got a similar pattern. It's just that in this case, when any tests have been done, you come back with nothing. And this is really a big introduction into the whole world of negative energies, because they're very, very common. It's a common condition. And usually what happens is people will go to the shaman after they've tried everything else and they've explored all the other diagnostic facilities at their disposal, and there's nothing obviously wrong. Well, that really is a very big indication of a negative energy. It's always important to check out the basics, check out the physical things first. But if those are drawing a blank, the finger really is pointing loud and clear at negative energy possession. So progressive loss of capability can just be such a subtle thing that, yeah, I just love cycling, to, oh, the bike's not really going out much. I love walking. I don't really feel like walking too far at the moment. I love going into the sea, into cold water. I can't quite turn. No, it feels like a bit too much at the moment. These are really good examples of progressive loss of capability, pointing quite unequivocally towards the possibility of negative energy possession. Long sleeping. Sleeping at unusual times. Never used to sleep at that time of the day, but Just so tired. People who start complaining about being tired all the time. Now, I had an illness called ME, and that was very much related to the subject. And that all happened to be long before I started my training. Flat out refusal to take help when offered. That's a big one. That really is a big one. People offer you help. No, I'm fine. I can do that myself. Thank you. No, or I'd rather not do it. I'll just not do it than have help. Really big one. Because of course, if you think about the nature of these negative energies, they're going to be whispering things into your ear that, oh, I don't need anyone's help. It's going to be all part of the pattern. If you're a parasitic entity and you want to take over, you don't want them having any support network, which comes back to the isolation again, you see. Or here's another one, number 12. I'm still doing such and such, so I can't be affected. I'm not completely on the floor, incapable of even moving off the floor. There's some degree of functionality in me still, so I'll hang on to that. I'll just turn a blind eye to all the things that and this is a real clue. I'm going to give you one. My big clue. More than a month had gone by and I intended to make kimchi and I hadn't got round to it. I love making kimchi and I couldn't be bothered anymore. It's a really good sign. So more than a month ago, when I started to get those, I can't be bothered to make kimchi, that's when I would have been much better off to have realised it's a big symptom here. It's a big red card being held up by me. Can't be bothered to do something I love to do. Right. After all, it's practical microbiology, isn't it? Inability to do things that used to be so easy. And in complete denial of this. Well, that's pretty much saying the same thing, isn't it? Really, yeah. So flat out refusal to consider a perspective when offered in goodwill. That was number 13. Number 14, inability to do things that used to be easy and in denial of this. That's great. Number 15. And this is more likely to happen at the end of this process when finally it hits you. Goodness me, it's negative energy. I just need to release these negative energies using the shamanic tools at my disposal, but I'll say something more about that later. And I need to write the word on the sheet so I remember to mention it. Such feelings as self-criticism, self-judgment. In really extreme cases, such thoughts as being unworthy to be alive, absolute classics. Shame, guilt, embarrassment. These are all the kind of feelings that occur when it's, oh my goodness me, why didn't I realise that before? And there's another one. When I'm in a good state, my hair is pretty much vertical. When it's lying flat on the head, it either means I need to go and get the hair cut, or negative energy possession, or both, because not being bothered to care for myself by getting my hair cut when it's due to be done is another indicator. See the way this goes. Relationship with water. I think I might have mentioned this already. That was number 17. So inability to drink water, inability to wash self, and inability to do things you love doing, like in my case, getting in the sea, getting in the White Spring. Haven't been in the White Spring for months. Real indicator there. Number 18, the 75% rule. So we're moving out of shamans and negative energy possession into the next thing, which is, why do shamans experience negative energy possession? One of the reasons they experience negative energy possession is because of this statistic. It's generally known among shamans, approximately 75% of the human population suffer from negative energy possession. And the reason for this is that when people die, the automatic means by which all negative energies were dealt with and processed has been severely hampered worldwide. I'm talking about trees. I'm talking about worldwide deforestation. When we had all the trees that we used to have, it wasn't an issue, because when the person died, the natural thing is the trees would draw the residues from that death, which now combine to create a negative energy. Well, that wouldn't even have started to happen, because the residues from the person dying would all have been drawn to the nearest tree and have been discharged by the nearest tree, because there were trees all over the place. It was a tree covered land world once upon a time. Go back far enough. So that's a big one. So this then brings, so the lack of trees means that there's a need for these negative energies to be released, and shamans and other practitioners take this work on. But that brings us to another point, that when the negative energy release is done, it needs to be done with empathy for the beings. This is very, very challenging, because these beings can cause so much problem by whispering all these awful thoughts in people's minds. And when a really horrible thought is whispered into a person's mind for long enough, they start to take it on board. Repetition is a great gift and also a great danger in this sense. That's why people go around and form gangs and do horrific things, because they've had these negative energies whispering in their ears for so many years. They do things which frankly are completely insane. And we know that we live in a mad world because, of course, horrible things occur. That's what it's all about. So it's the empathy. The shaman needs to have this empathy with the fact that it's a majority condition. So whenever a shaman ever experiences a state of being possessed by negative energy, it's to be able to go into gratitude that this is not how I live my life all the time, unlike so many. And to be aware of this valuable work that we do, and to be aware of the need to keep ourselves checked and protected. So this comes into number 19, humility. It's humbling to become consciously aware of being possessed by something which is not in our best interests, by an intrusive negative force. That's what a negative energy is. It's intrusive. It's got in somehow or other, and it's not in our best interests. It is humbling, and the great gift of humility is it dissolves arrogance, just like that arrogance is dissolved. Number 20, where it and they come from is less important than taking action. So if you finally realize, oh my goodness me, I've got enough of these signs to know that's it, negative energy. What you don't do, you don't spend the next 3 months trying to work out where it all came from. You get straight into taking the action. Which brings us to 21. Point 21. Traditionally speaking, some shamans and some practitioners, and unfortunately this is still true today, particularly of so-called exorcists, a lot of these people actually do this process with violence, and they have got a really strong opinion about these negative energies, and they're full of judgment about them. Oh, they're so evil, they don't understand the bigger picture. They're never meant to be here in the first place. It's worldwide deforestation that's given us this issue, so we can all take collective responsibility for that. Oh yes, we can. Which is why some people get into this thing, and every year they have to plant trees. That's why it happens to them. It happened to me. I did that for a while. I went around planting trees. It feels really good, because it's ultimately the prescription for what we need as human beings. More trees in the world. We do. So this is it. The contemporary shamanic practice for negative energy releases, we love them up and we love them out. We love them up and we love them out. We love them up and we love them out. And we send them without any delays, without any silly little nonsenses. It's straight up and straight out to their heaven dimension. This is the harsh reality, is all these negative energies only hanging around because this energy, the energy of the earth herself, is toxic to them all. So what they do is they jump into a life form, most particularly a human or an animal, which is why you've got biblical stories about pigs being possessed by negative energies. It's all in there. Historically speaking, all the religions know of this. In the Muslim religion, everyone knows about the jinn. This is all well known by many religions. And of course, in our rational, mind-dominated world, people pretend these things don't exist, and I see where that gets them. Not in a very good place, unfortunately, because that's why we've got such an issue. The denial coupled with the primary means of removal, the tree. So what happens is the negative energies will be taken with love into the tree, translated through the tree, through the process of transpiration, and out of the top of the leaves, the top of the branches, and off to the heaven dimension. Shamans, we do the same thing with our blue vortex. And other shamans work with the feather and do the same thing. So this is what it's all about, loving them up and loving them out. And they are taken to the heaven dimension. This is where all the ones that have been freed live, and it's a completely different dimension from where we operate. It has nothing to do with us at all, except there is a simple conduit between here and there. And in really severe cases of a negative energy possession, what will happen is one or more of the transformed enlightened beings from heaven comes down through the vortex, has a little word with the negative energies that are frightened, because it's fear that holds them back. It's fear because throughout human history, so many negative energies have had terrible things being done to them. Like imagine, some shamans have actually condemned them to be put into the earth. This is no good for the earth, and it's no good for the negative energies. It just creates torment. So we don't do any of that. No, loving them up, loving them out. And we do it ASAP. No messing about. We get on with it. And of course, the issue here for all shamans is that we cannot do any work without people's permission. And this is why the permission comes in a series of stages. The first permission is when the person says, yes, I want the work. The second permission is when they transfer their fee for the work. That's a really important step. They transfer their fee for the work. That's a second permission. The third permission is when they receive the report for the work that they've done, and the fourth permission is when they read the report and they take all the information in and they embrace it fully. That's actually how that works. So no delays, no distractions, no funny stuff. Very important. I remember a shaman say, this negative energy is trying to tell me its life story. Don't listen, get on with the work. Another person thinks it might be a good idea to put the negative energy in the box. No, distraction. Up the vortex with the feather into the tree. Make the action. Number 23, cleaning your home. People who are affected by negative energies gradually, over a period of time, find it more and more difficult to keep their home clean. It's a really good sign as well. 24, prioritizing gratitude. A person that is severely possessed by negative energies will not be capable of offering gratitude and thanks to everything that they have in their life. They will tend to be so negatively focused in their perspective that all they can do is to complain. Now there's a little cue or a little clue for you. If you know someone who is constantly complaining, it is likely there are a little voice or voices whispering in their ear, it's all a veil of tears, oh, it's all a tale of woe. Yes, that's what the chronic complaining mindset is all about. So embracing gratitude for all that you have, very, very important. So this doesn't get a number, so I'm going to give it number 25. It's the buddy system. People who train the shamans, it's really important to either have your teacher or someone else who is a practitioner that you can communicate with, that you can relate to, that you can get in touch with when you feel the need, when you feel it's appropriate. This is such an important thing to do. And it's interesting because for so many years this is what I had, and then I just let that slip. It's wrist slapping time. Yeah, shamans always need to have a buddy, someone they can trust and rely on, so the buddy can ask them the question, so how are you really, what's really going on, and they can listen. And when they listen and they can make the observation, sounds to me like, and then they can arrange to do some work for that person to release negative energies. Now, it is possible to do a negative energy release on your own, and this is my advice to you. If you're ever in a situation where you do negative energy release on its own, you thank yourself for doing that. And then, as soon as it's convenient, you get in touch with your buddy or someone who has got similar abilities to yourself, and you ask them to either check you out or do a reciprocal swap. That's a good one. Do a reciprocal swap. Negative energy release for each other. I remember a couple of months ago, a couple of people I trained, it occurred to them, they did it. It's always so helpful. So, the thing I haven't mentioned is this. Now, for those of you who remember the 20th century and remember the TV show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, in the Buffyverse, as it's called, there is a particular quality about shamans. So, not shamans, sorry. There's a particular quality about vampires. The thing about vampires is vampires can't do anything until you invite them in. Well, that's a nice little allegory for this situation here, because we might not consciously invite negative energies into our world, but it's very easy to do so without being fully present. And just to really dot the I's and cross the T's, well, where does this even come from? Negative energy possession is most likely to happen when a baby is being born. So negative energy can come in because it's a moment of vulnerability. These are all moments of vulnerability. Another is having a hospital operation. Another is being in a cinema where your eyes are glued to the screen and you are in this receptive state, and there is any kind of dodgy, negative content. The worst would obviously be a horror film. And then the other thing is being around a lot of alcohol drinkers in a place where alcohol is habitually consumed, such as a pub or a club. These are all places where this is likely to happen. And if you're a woman, the act of giving birth in a place which is not energetically cleansed, that's another one too. So of course it's really great to remember all the ways of keeping ourselves clean, energetically cleansing with things like Palo Santo and white sage being a good one. There's a very powerful tree resin called the Poponax, which is very good. There's frankincense, which is very uplifting and very good too. There's all sorts of things, but bottom line, negative energy release. Keep an awareness of developing a lot of these signs and symptoms. And the other thing is have a guide within you that you remember to listen to on a regular basis. How am I doing? A little self-reflection, a little self-evaluation can save yourself a whole lot of what names. So finally, The ultimate reasons why shamanic practitioners experience negative energy possession is to stop them from being arrogant. They can't think they're superior to anyone else because they're just like everybody else. It happens. And the fact this happens has given us a dose of humility, it's given us empathy. We can empathize so keenly and so acutely with those that suffer from this condition. And then we can be in service to those that need us. And I do believe I've nailed it on this one. And if there's something I haven't brought up, please bring it up in the comments. If there's something you want to ask me in the comments. That's what the comments are for. All the love to you.